Babylon. The name has echoed for 3,000 years. It has meant power and wealth and wonder. It has meant pride and sin and ruin. Empires have feared it. Prophets have cursed it. It became a legend so vast that, for centuries, people doubted it had ever truly existed at all. But it did exist. And once, long ago, it was the most magnificent city on the face of the earth. Its walls were so wide that chariots raced along the top of them. Its gates blazed with blue and gold. At its heart rose a tower that men believed could reach the heavens. It may have been the first city in all of human history to hold more than 200,000 people, a roaring, glittering capital at the center of the known world. Where the streets were paved, the stars were mapped, and the laws were carved in stone dot, and today, almost nothing remains. Where Babylon once stood, in the dust of southern Iraq, there are only low mounds of broken brick, baking under the sun. A city that ruled the world, reduced to the silence of the desert. This is the story of how the greatest city of the ancient world rose from the mud of two rivers, and how it fell, and was buried, and became a ghost not to find the beginning. You have to go back further than Babylon itself. You have to go back to the land that made it. Between two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, lies a long, flat plain. The Greeks gave it a name that has stuck for thousands of years. Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers. Today, it is mostly Iraq, and it is one of the most important places in the entire human story, because this is where civilization itself was born. But it was not an easy land. There was little rain. The rivers flooded without warning and dried to a trickle. The summers were brutal, but the soil, where it could be watered, was astonishingly rich, and the people who settled here learned to dig canals to tame the floods, and to grow far more food than they needed. And when people grow more food than they need, something extraordinary happens. Some of them are freed from farming. They become priests and traders and craftsmen and kings. Villages swell into towns, and towns into something the world had never seen before. Cities dot here. In Mesopotamia, more than 5,000 years ago, humanity built its first cities, places like Uruk and Ur, with tens of thousands of people, towering temples, and bustling markets. Here, people first pressed marks into wet clay and invented writing. Here they invented the wheel and the plow and the very idea of a state. Everything that came after, every empire, every capital, every civilization grew out of this narrow strip of riverbank dot, and in the middle of this cradle of the world stood a small, unremarkable town on the banks of the Euphrates. Its name meant the Gate of the Gods. Its name was Babylon. For centuries, it was nothing special, but it was about to become the most powerful city on earth. Babylon's first rise came from a single man. Around the year 1792 BC, a king named Hammurabi took the throne of Babylon. At the time, Mesopotamia was a patchwork of rival city-states, each jealous of the others, each scheming for power. Hammurabi was patient and cunning and ruthless. Over the course of a long reign, through war and diplomacy and betrayal, he conquered his rivals one by one, until he had united the whole of Mesopotamia under the rule of a city. Babylon was no longer a town. It was the capital of an empire. But Hammurabi is remembered today not for his conquests, which faded, but for something far more lasting. Near the end of his reign, he had a great pillar of black stone carved with a collection of laws, nearly 300 of them, covering trade, property, marriage, debt, theft, and crime. It was not the first set of laws in history, but it was the most complete that had yet been written down, and it survives almost intact to this day. The Code of Hammurabi is famous for a single principle that still echoes in our language. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. If a man broke another man's bone, his own bone would be broken. The punishments were harsh, and they were not equal for everyone. A noble and a commoner, and an enslaved person were treated very differently. But the idea beneath it was revolutionary. Justice would no longer be whatever the powerful decided in the moment. It would be written down, fixed, and public, where everyone could see it. The law would stand above the whim of any single man. It was one of the first times in human history that a society tried to write down the rules by which it would live. And it was Babylon that did it. Hammurabi's empire did not outlast him by much. After his death, the first Babylonian empire crumbled, conquered and sacked by outsiders. For more than 1,000 years, Babylon rose and fell, was ruled by foreign kings, was burned, and was rebuilt again and again. It remained an important and holy city, but it was not yet the wonder of the world. It would come at the very end of its story in one last blinding age of glory. In the year 626 BC. After centuries under foreign domination, Babylon broke free and founded a new empire of its own, the empire that would become its most magnificent and its last. And under one king, it reached a height of power and splendor that the ancient world had never seen. His name was Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar II ruled Babylon for more than 40 years, and he poured the wealth of an empire into making his capital the greatest city on earth. He was a conqueror, marching his armies across the Near East, but above all, he was a builder, perhaps the most ambitious builder of the entire ancient world. Under him, Babylon was not just restored, it was transformed into a vision of paradise on earth, designed to overwhelm every visitor with the glory of its king and its gods. Picture the city as a traveler would have seen it, coming across the dusty plain. First, the walls. They ringed the city for miles, massive layered fortifications of mud brick, so broad the ancient writers claimed that a 4-horse chariot could turn around on top of them. To an approaching enemy, they were the most formidable defenses in the world. To everyone else, they were a declaration. This city cannot fall. You would enter through the most beautiful gate ever built. The Ishtar Gate rose high above the road, and it was covered, from top to bottom, in glazed bricks of a deep, brilliant blue, the color of lapis lazuli, the most precious stone they knew. And across that endless blue marched rows of golden animals, molded in relief, bulls and lions and strange horned dragons, the sacred beasts of Babylon's gods. To pass beneath, it was to walk into another world. Beyond the gate ran the processional way, a grand avenue lined with walls of blue tile and snarling lions, leading into the heart of the city. There were temples beyond counting, and palaces, and markets crowded with people and goods from across the known world. And rising above it all, dominating the skyline, was the great tower. At the center of Babylon stood a vast stepped temple tower called a ziggurat, a colossal pyramid of brick, climbing toward the sky in great terraces, crowned by a shrine to Marduk, the chief god of the city. It was called Etemenanki, which meant the foundation of heaven and earth. It may have stood 90 meters high, as tall as a modern skyscraper, made entirely by hand from millions of mud bricks. To the people of Babylon, it was the meeting place of heaven and earth, the spot where their God touched the world. To the foreigners and exiles who saw it towering over the plain, it was something else, a monument to human ambition, so staggering that it seemed almost an act of defiance against heaven itself. You may already know its other name, for this great tower, reaching for the sky in the city, whose name meant the Gate of the Gods, is almost certainly the origin of one of the most famous stories ever told, the Tower of Babel, the tale of a proud people who built a tower to reach the heavens and were scattered and confused for their arrogance. The story is a legend, but the tower was real, and it stood at the heart of Babylon, and people came from across the world to stare up at it in wonder and in fear. And then there are the gardens, the most famous. And the most mysterious of all, the ancient world spoke of 7 great wonders. And one of them was here, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The stories describe a vast artificial mountain of terraces rising in tiers above the city, planted with trees and flowers and cascading vines, watered by some ingenious machine that lifted the river up to the heights. A green paradise blooming impossibly in the middle of a hot, flat plain. Legend says Nebuchadnezzar built them for his wife, a princess from the green mountains of the north, who was homesick for the forests of her childhood. So her king, it is said, built her a mountain of gardens in the desert, so she would never again have to long for home. It is one of the most beautiful images the ancient world has left us. And there is just one problem. We have never found them. For all of Babylon's ruins that archaeologists have uncovered, no trace of the Hanging Gardens has ever turned up. And the Babylonians themselves, who wrote down so much, never seem to mention them. Some scholars now believe the gardens were never in Babylon at all, or that they are a legend that grew in the telling. We may never know the truth. And so the most famous wonder of Babylon remains exactly that, a wonder suspended forever between history and dream. But Babylon was far more than its monuments. It was a living city, and one of the most sophisticated the world had ever Babylon. And you would have found people watching it carefully, night after night, for centuries. The Babylonians were the great astronomers of the ancient world. From the tops of their temples, priests tracked the moon and the planets, recorded their movements on clay tablets, and learned to predict eclipses long before anyone understood what they were. They divided the heavens into the band of constellations we still use today, the signs of the zodiac. Every horoscope ever written traces back, in part, to the rooftops of Babylon. And they counted in a way that still shapes your daily life. The Babylonians built their mathematics not around the number 10, but around the number 60. It is the reason there are 60 seconds in a minute, and 60 minutes in an hour. It is the reason a circle has 360 degrees. Every time you glance at a clock, you are using a system handed down across 4,000 years. From the scribes of Mesopotamia. In the streets below, Babylon was a roar of life and trade. It sat at the crossroads of the world, and into its markets flowed goods and people from everywhere, merchants and travelers, soldiers and slaves, speaking a dozen languages. There were schools where boys learned to write the wedge-shaped script we call cuneiform, pressing it into clay with a reed. There were contracts and tax records, and letters, and school exercises, and even complaints, hundreds of thousands of clay tablets that let us read the words of ordinary Babylonians to this day. It was a city of priests and accountants, poets and astronomers, the beating intellectual heart of the ancient, Near East. But Babylon's glory was built on conquest, and conquest leaves wounds that do not heal. To fill the city with wealth and labor, Nebuchadnezzar made war across the Near East, and one of those wars left a scar that the world still remembers. Far to the west lay the small kingdom of Judah, and its capital, Jerusalem. When Jerusalem defied him, Nebuchadnezzar's response was merciless. His armies besieged the city, broke its walls, and burned it. They destroyed the great Temple of Solomon, the holiest site of the Jewish people, and they carried much of the population away into captivity, marching them hundreds of miles east, to live as exiles in the shadow of Babylon. This was the Babylonian Captivity, one of the most important events in the history of an entire people. For decades, the exiles of Judah lived by the rivers of Babylon in a foreign city, mourning the home they had lost. Their grief became some of the most haunting words ever written, the lament of a people sitting down by the waters of a strange land and weeping when they remembered home. To the Jewish people, and to the half of the world shaped by their scriptures, Babylon would forever have to be more than a city. It would be the very symbol of exile and of overwhelming worldly power set against the faithful. A name that meant captivity, decadence, and pride before a fall. Babylon, at its height, had made itself unforgettable, but it had also made itself a legend of arrogance. And legends of arrogance tend to end the same way. Nebuchadnezzar died after more than 40 years on the throne, and with him, Babylon's golden age began to dim. His successors were weaker men. The empire he had built was vast, but it was held together by force and by fear, and without a strong hand, it began to fray. There were palace intrigues, and short reigns, and growing discontent. The last king of Babylon spent years away from his own capital, and quarreled with the powerful priests of Marduk, the very men whose support a Babylonian king needed most. At the heart of the greatest empire in the world, the center was rotting Dot, and far to the east, a new power was rising, one that would sweep the old world away. His name was Cyrus, king of Persia. In a single generation, Cyrus the Great built the largest empire the world had ever seen, swallowing kingdom after kingdom. And in the year 539 BC, he turned his eyes toward the greatest prize of all. He turned toward Babylon. The Bible tells a story about Babylon's final night, and whether or not it happened exactly as written, it has become the image of the city's fall. It tells of a great feast, thrown by the king of Babylon, while the enemy gathered outside. In the middle of the celebration, as the king and his nobles drank from sacred cups, a hand appeared and wrote glowing words upon the wall. Words no one could read. A prophet was summoned, and he gave their meaning. God had weighed the kingdom of Babylon and found it wanting. Its days were numbered. That very night, the story says, the city fell. It is from this tale that we still speak of the writing on the wall, the warning of doom, that the proud are too blind to read. What actually happened may have been even stranger. The Greek historian Herodotus tells us that Cyrus's army, finding Babylon's mighty walls impossible to storm, did something extraordinary. They dug channels and diverted the great river Euphrates, which flowed through the heart of the city, lowering it until his soldiers could wade in along the riverbed, beneath the walls, and take the city from within. Whatever the truth, the result was the same. The greatest city in the world, ringed by the most formidable walls ever built, fell with barely a fight. In 539 BC, Babylon opened its gates to Persia, and the empire of Nebuchadnezzar simply ended. The city that had ruled the world would never rule again. And yet, Babylon did not fall in fire and slaughter. It fell quietly into the hands of a new master. And at first, little changed. Cyrus was a shrewd ruler. He did not destroy Babylon. He wanted it. He honored its gods, kept its priests, and presented himself not as a conqueror, but as a liberator. He even let the exiles go home. The captives of Judah were freed to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple, an act for which Cyrus is remembered with gratitude in the scriptures to this day. So Babylon lived on, no longer the capital of an empire, but still a great and holy city, now a jewel in the crown of Persia. And 2 centuries later, it would have one last brush with greatness. In the year 331 BC, a young Macedonian conqueror named Alexander the Great swept through the Persian Empire and entered Babylon in triumph. He was dazzled by it. He planned to make this ancient city the capital of his own vast new empire, the center of a world that would stretch from Greece to India. He began plans to restore its great tower and its temples to their former glory, but it was not to be. In 323 BC, in a palace in Babylon, Alexander fell ill and died, still a young man. His empire was torn apart by his generals almost before his body was cold, and Babylon's last chance to be the capital of the world died with him. After that, the long decline began, and it was not dramatic. There was no final fiery destruction. Babylon simply faded. Alexander's successors founded a glittering new capital nearby and slowly drew Babylon's people and its trade away to the new city. The great temples fell into disrepair. The astronomers kept watching the stars for a while longer, recording the heavens on clay almost to the very end. But the city around them was emptying. The Euphrates, the river that had given Babylon life, shifted its course over the centuries, as rivers do. The canals silted up, the fields turned back to dust, and the city itself was slowly eaten away, not by armies, but by time and by need. Generation after generation, people came and carried off its bricks to build elsewhere, until the great walls and the palaces and the temples were quarried down to their foundations. The towering ziggurat was reduced to a pit. The Ishtar Gate was buried. The mud bricks of the greatest city on earth dissolved back into the mud they had come from that by the time the centuries had finished with it. Babylon was gone. The most magnificent city of the ancient world had become a series of low, shapeless mounds in the desert, so featureless that travelers passed by without knowing what lay beneath their feet. The name lived on, vast and legendary, in scripture and story. But the place had vanished so completely that people began to wonder whether the real Babylon had ever stood at all. It took the modern world to find it again. In the 1800s. Explorers and archaeologists began to dig into the mounds of southern Iraq, searching for the lost cities of the Bible and the ancient histories. And slowly, out of the dust, Babylon began to return. They uncovered the lines of its great walls, the foundations of its palaces, the route of the processional way. They found the broken base of the legendary tower, and deep in the earth, they found the shattered, glittering pieces of the Ishtar Gate, its brilliant blue bricks and golden dragons, scattered and buried, but still, after 2,500 years, impossibly beautiful. Much of that gate was carefully lifted from the ground, carried across the world, and rebuilt inside a museum in Berlin, where it still stands today, so that visitors can walk beneath the blue and gold of Babylon, just as travelers once did at the gates of the city itself. But the city it belonged to remains where it has always been, a field of ruins, on the banks of a shifted river in the heat of Iraq. Half restored, half buried, the foundations of a vanished wonder open to the sky. Babylon was the first of its kind, the first true metropolis, the first great city to rule a wide world and to call itself the center of everything. And it became something more than a city. It became an idea, the archetype of human glory at its peak, and of human glory brought low. When we want to speak of overwhelming wealth and pride, we still say Babylon. And when we want to speak of how the mightiest can fall, we still say and wrote the laws and built a tower toward heaven. It held more people than any city before it, and its name was known to the ends of the earth. Its kings believed, surely, that a city so vast and so magnificent could never truly end. They were wrong. They always are. The gardens are gone, if they ever bloomed. The tower is a hole in the ground. The river has moved on, and the greatest city the ancient world ever knew, the gate of the gods, the wonder of the earth, is now what every empire, in the end, becomes: silence.